My name is Jenna, and I am 38 years old. I am sitting in my new living room right now, looking out at a garden filled with sunlight and peace. For 13 years, I believed I had the perfect marriage. I believed my husband loved me. I believed my sister was my best friend. But one night, everything I thought I knew came crashing down when my husband looked me in the eyes and said he loved my sister, and that they had been together since before our wedding. My whole world collapsed. But my revenge was perfect. Before I begin this story, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. And if stories about betrayal, strength, and finding yourself again speak to you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. You will not want to miss what comes next. Now, let me take you back to where it all began, to the day I thought was the start of my fairy tale. I was 24 years old when I first met Derek. I had just graduated with a degree in interior design from a small college in Colorado, and I was working at a modest design firm in Denver. The job did not pay much, but I loved it. I loved walking into empty spaces and imagining what they could become. I loved helping people turn houses into homes. It was at a networking event for real estate professionals that I first saw him. The event was held at a rooftop bar downtown, and I remember the city lights twinkling behind him as he walked toward my table. He was 26, confident but not arrogant, with warm brown eyes and a smile that made me feel like I was the only person in the room. He introduced himself as Derek, a financial manager at a growing real estate company. We started talking about work, but soon the conversation drifted to our favorite hiking trails in the Rocky Mountains, our shared love of old movies, and our dreams for the future. 2 hours passed without either of us noticing. By the time the event ended, I knew something had shifted inside me. He asked for my number, and I gave it to him without hesitation. Our first official date was at a small Italian restaurant near my apartment. Derek brought me a bouquet of white tulips because I had mentioned they were my favorite during our first conversation. That small detail, the fact that he remembered, made my heart flutter. Over the next 18 months, we built something beautiful together. We went hiking in the mountains on weekends, cooked dinner together on weeknights, and stayed up late watching classic films until we fell asleep on the couch. Derek was attentive, thoughtful, and present. He remembered the little things, the anniversary of our first date, my favorite coffee order, the way I liked my eggs in the morning. After 6 months of dating, I decided it was time to introduce him to my family. My parents, Linda and Marcus, lived in a cozy suburban home about an hour outside of Denver. My mother was warm and welcoming, always the first to offer a hug and a home-cooked meal. My father was more reserved, a man of few words who expressed love through actions rather than sentences. I was nervous about the introduction, but Derek charmed them both. He complimented my mother's cooking, engaged my father in conversation about football, and helped clear the table after dinner without being asked. By the end of the evening, my mother pulled me aside and whispered that she liked him very much. And then there was Caroline. My sister was 3 years younger than me, 21 at the time, and we had always been close. Growing up, I was her protector, her confidant, her biggest cheerleader. When she struggled in school, I helped her study. When she went through her first heartbreak, I held her while she cried. I loved her fiercely, the way only an older sister can. When I introduced her to Derek, she was bright and enthusiastic. She hugged him warmly, congratulated us on our relationship, and asked dozens of questions about how we met, what he did for work, what his hobbies were. I thought she was just being supportive, just excited to see her big sister happy. I did not notice the way her eyes lingered on him a moment too long. I did not notice the slight flush in her cheeks when he smiled at her. I was too busy being in love to see what was right in front of me. After 18 months of dating, Derek proposed. He took me back to the Italian restaurant where we had our first date, got down on one knee between the appetizers and the main course, and asked me to spend the rest of my life with him. The whole restaurant applauded. I said yes through tears of joy. The wedding planning began immediately, and I asked Caroline to be my maid of honor. She threw herself into the role with enthusiasm, helping me choose the perfect dress, coordinating with vendors, addressing invitations late into the night. I was grateful for her support. I thought we were building memories together. The wedding took place on a crisp autumn afternoon at a small church on the outskirts of Denver. Pastor William officiated, and about 150 of our closest friends and family filled the wooden pews. I remember walking down the aisle, my father's arm steady beneath mine, my eyes locked on Derek waiting at the altar. He looked at me with such love, such tenderness, that I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. When we exchanged vows, when I promised to love him in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, until death do us part, I meant every word. I believed he did too. But there is one moment from that day that haunts me now. A moment I did not understand until years later. As Derek slipped the ring onto my finger, his eyes flickered away from mine for just a fraction of a second. I followed his gaze without thinking, and it landed on Caroline, standing just behind me in her pale pink bridesmaid dress. The look lasted less than a heartbeat, and then his eyes were back on mine, warm and loving. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I had imagined it. I wish I had trusted my instincts. The first year of our marriage was everything I had dreamed it would be. Derek and I bought a small townhouse near downtown Denver, close enough to both of our jobs that we could sometimes meet for lunch. We painted the walls together, argued playfully about furniture placement, and adopted a rescue dog named Biscuit, who shed everywhere and made us laugh every single day. We fell into an easy rhythm. Derek left for work early, and I would make coffee and kiss him goodbye at the door. I would spend my days at the design firm, coming home in the evenings to cook dinner while Derek told me about his day. We watched television together, took Biscuit for evening walks, and fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms. It was simple, comfortable, and deeply satisfying. Caroline visited often during that first year. She had just finished college and was searching for a job, so she had plenty of free time. She would show up on Saturday afternoons with wine and gossip, or join us for Sunday dinners. I loved having her around. It felt like our family was growing, strengthening. I did not notice that her visits always seemed to brighten when Derek was home. I did not notice that she asked about him constantly when he was not. 2 years into our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. Derek and I had talked about starting a family, but we had not been actively trying, so the positive test was a wonderful surprise. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor, staring at those 2 pink lines, my heart pounding with excitement and fear and overwhelming love for a person I had not yet met. Derek was over the moon. He came home that night with a bouquet of white tulips and a tiny pair of baby booties that he had bought on his lunch break. He picked me up and spun me around the kitchen, laughing and crying at the same time. That night, lying in bed with his hand on my still flat stomach, I felt like our life together was just beginning. Sophie was born on a sunny April morning after 14 hours of labor. She was perfect, with Derek's brown eyes and my auburn hair, and from the moment I held her, I knew I would do anything to protect her. The first visitors to the hospital were my parents, who arrived with flowers and tears and enough baby clothes to dress triplets. Caroline came shortly after, rushing into the room with a teddy bear nearly as big as she was. She hugged me first, congratulating me, telling me how beautiful Sophie was. And then she turned to Derek. They embraced, and the hug lasted just a moment too long. And they pulled apart. I saw something pass between them. A look I could not name, a silent communication I was not part of. It made me uncomfortable, a tiny seed of unease planting itself in my stomach. But I was exhausted from labor, hormonal and emotional, and I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Derek loved me. Caroline loved me. There was nothing to worry about. Life with a newborn was chaotic and wonderful. I took maternity leave from my job, spending my days in a haze of feedings and diaper changes and very little sleep. Derek tried to help when he could, but his job was demanding, and he was often gone before Sophie woke and home after she was already asleep. I missed him, but I understood. He was working hard for our family. When Sophie was about 2 years old, I started to notice small changes in Derek. He began staying late at the office more frequently, sometimes not coming home until 8 or 9 at night. When I asked about it, he said the company was expanding and there was extra work to be done. I believed him. Why would I not? One evening, I called his cell phone to ask when he would be home for dinner. He answered on the 4th ring, and in the background, I heard laughter. Female laughter. My stomach tightened. "Who is that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual.
"Just some colleagues,"
he said quickly.
"We are finishing up a meeting. I will be home soon."
He hung up before I could ask anything else. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after that call, holding my phone and staring at nothing. Something felt wrong, but I could not put my finger on what it was. Eventually, I pushed the feeling aside and went to give Sophie her bath. Derek came home an hour later with takeout and an apology, and the unease faded into the background. Around this time, Caroline started visiting less frequently. She had landed a job in marketing at a firm across town, and she claimed her new position was keeping her busy. I missed her, but I understood. We were both adults with adult responsibilities. But I did notice something strange at family gatherings. Whenever we all got together at my parents' house for holidays or birthdays, Derek and Caroline would inevitably end up in conversation together, standing a little too close, speaking a little too quietly. Whenever I approached, they would step apart and change the subject. I asked Derek about it once, late at night when we were lying in bed. "You and Caroline seem to talk a lot at family dinners," I said, trying to sound curious rather than accusatory.
"She asks me for investment advice,"
he replied without hesitation.
"She has been saving money and wants to know where to put it. I'm just trying to help."
It was a reasonable explanation. Derek was good with money, and Caroline had never been great at managing her finances. I nodded and let it go. But the seed of unease that had been planted in the hospital room was starting to grow. 5 years into our marriage, I gave birth to our son, Ethan. He was a calm, easy baby, the perfect complement to Sophie's boundless energy. With 2 children now, our little townhouse felt cramped, so we made the decision to move to a larger home in the suburbs. The new house was beautiful, a 4-bedroom colonial with a big backyard and a white picket fence that felt almost too perfect to be real. Derek had been promoted to director of finance at his company, and his salary had more than doubled. We could afford the house easily, and I thought it was the beginning of a new chapter for our family. I decided to leave my job to stay home with the children. It was a difficult decision, giving up the career I loved. But Sophie was starting kindergarten, and Ethan needed constant attention. and I did not want to miss these precious years.
Derek supported my choice, telling me he made enough money for both of us. From the outside, our life looked perfect. We had the big house, the 2 beautiful children, the successful husband, and the stay-at-home mom. We went to church on Sundays, hosted neighborhood barbecues in the summer, and took family vacations to the beach every August. But behind closed doors, something was shifting. Derek and I talked less. We laughed less. The easy intimacy of our early years had faded into something more distant, more polite. We were partners in running a household, but we no longer felt like lovers. I told myself it was normal. I told myself every marriage went through phases. I told myself things would get better once the kids were older and we had more time for each other. I was so desperate to believe in the life I had built that I refused to see it crumbling. By the 8th year of our marriage, the distance between Derek and me had grown into a chasm. We still shared a bed, but we slept on opposite sides, our bodies never touching through the night. We still had conversations, but they were about schedules and logistics, about who would pick up Sophie from soccer practice and whether Ethan needed new shoes. We were roommates, not spouses. I tried to bridge the gap. I planned romantic dinners after the kids went to bed, putting on a nice dress and lighting candles and making his favorite meal. Derek would come home, eat quickly, and excuse himself to his home office to finish work. I would sit alone at the table, watching the candles burn down to nothing. I suggested weekend getaways, just the 2 of us. Derek always had a reason why the timing was not right. A big project at work, a meeting he could not miss, a conference out of town that happened to fall on the same weekend. The rejection stung more each time. I noticed that Derek had become protective of his phone. He used to leave it lying around the house, but now it was always in his pocket, or face down on a table. When I asked why he had changed his password, he said the company had implemented new security protocols. At night, when he thought I was asleep, I would hear him get out of bed and pad down the stairs. I would lie there in the darkness, straining to hear, catching only fragments of whispered conversations that ended the moment I made any sound. I knew something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. But I was afraid to confront it, afraid that if I pulled at the thread, the whole fabric of my life would unravel. Family gatherings became increasingly uncomfortable. At Thanksgiving, I watched Derek and Caroline step out onto my parents' back porch together, closing the sliding door behind them. I could see them through the glass, standing close, their heads bent together in intense conversation. When I walked toward the door, they saw me coming and immediately moved apart. By the time I joined them, they were discussing nothing more significant than the weather. "Just getting some fresh air," Caroline said, with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Derek was telling me about a stock that might be worth investing in," she added. I nodded and said nothing, but my heart was racing, and my hands were trembling, and I knew that I could not keep pretending forever. One night, several months later, I woke at 2 a.m. to find Derek's side of the bed empty. I lay still for a moment, listening to the house, and then I heard it. His voice, low and soft, coming from somewhere downstairs. I slipped out of bed and crept to the top of the staircase. From there, I could see the glow of the porch light through the living room window. Derek was outside, pacing slowly, his phone pressed to his ear. I could not hear everything, but I caught pieces. "I know," he said. "I miss you too." A pause. "Soon. I promise." My blood turned to ice. I backed away from the stairs as quietly as I could, my mind racing with possibilities, each worse than the last. Who was he talking to? What did he mean by soon? What was he promising? I was back in bed, pretending to be asleep, when he returned. He slid under the covers without a word, and I felt the mattress shift as he turned away from me. I lay there for hours, staring at the ceiling, my world tilting on its axis. The next day, I tried to act normal. I made breakfast, got the kids ready for school, kissed Derek goodbye as he left for work. But inside, I was falling apart. I called my best friend Grace that afternoon. Grace and I had known each other since college, and she was now a successful divorce attorney. We met for coffee at a little cafe near her office, and I told her everything. The late nights, the whispered phone calls, the strange closeness between Derek and Caroline. Grace listened without interrupting, her face growing more serious with each revelation.
"Jenna," she said finally, "I have seen this pattern before. Too many times. You need to start paying attention. Really paying attention." "You think he is cheating on me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I think you need to find out for certain before you decide what to do next. If you want, I can recommend a private investigator." I shook my head. "No, not yet. I am not ready for that." Grace reached across the table and took my hand. "Just remember this. Sometimes the people closest to us hurt us the most. And sometimes the truth hurts less than the not knowing." I drove home in a daze, her words echoing in my mind. I was not ready to investigate my own husband. I was not ready to confirm my worst fears. So I did what I had been doing for years. I buried my head in the sand and hoped everything would work out. But Grace's words stayed with me, haunting my dreams, whispering in my ear every time Derek came home late or stepped outside to take a call. Sometimes the people closest to us hurt us the most. I just never imagined how close or how much. It was year 12 of our marriage when everything began to unravel. It was a Sunday morning in late September. The leaves outside were just starting to turn gold and crimson, and the air had that crisp autumn smell that always reminded me of new beginnings. How ironic that this particular Sunday would mark the beginning of the end. Derek was in the shower, and the kids were still asleep. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard his phone buzz on the counter. I glanced at it without thinking, and the screen lit up with a notification. A message from someone listed simply as C. The preview showed only the first few words. "Last night was amazing. I cannot wait to..." My heart stopped. I stared at the phone, frozen, not breathing, not thinking. And then Sophie came bounding down the stairs, still in her pajamas, and grabbed Derek's phone off the counter.
"I will bring it to Daddy,"
she chirped, already heading toward the bathroom. "Wait," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Give that to me, sweetie." She handed it over with a confused look, and I quickly glanced at the full message before the screen went dark. "Last night was amazing. I cannot wait to see you again." And below the text was a photo. 2 hands intertwined on what looked like white hotel sheets. One hand was clearly masculine, and the other was feminine, adorned with a distinctive ring. I recognized that ring immediately. I had given it to Caroline for her birthday last year. It was a vintage piece with a small emerald stone that had belonged to our grandmother. I had searched for months to find it. The room spun around me. I gripped the counter to steady myself, forcing myself to breathe. Derek came downstairs a few minutes later, freshly showered and smiling.
"Good morning,"
he said, kissing my cheek.
"What is for breakfast?"
I handed him his phone without a word.
"You left this in the kitchen."
He took it, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Fear. Guilt. But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it.
"Thanks,"
he said casually, sliding it into his pocket. I watched him pour his coffee, chat with Sophie about her upcoming school project, ruffle Ethan's hair when he came downstairs. He was the picture of a loving father, a devoted husband. But now I saw it all differently. Now I saw the mask. I did not confront him that day. I was not ready. I needed to be certain. I needed proof that could not be explained away or denied. Over the following weeks, I became a detective in my own marriage. I checked our bank statements obsessively, and I found charges I had never noticed before. Expensive dinners at restaurants I had never been to. Hotel rooms in the city on nights when Derek claimed to be working late.
Jewelry purchases that had never been given to me.
I called a friend who worked at Derek's company, a woman named Rachel who had always been kind to me at office parties. I kept my voice light, casual, as I asked about the company's travel schedule. "Oh, Derek's department has not had any out-of-town conferences in months," Rachel said. "Things have been pretty quiet around here." But Derek had told me he was in Phoenix just last week. For 3 days. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I desperately did not want to see. But I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to know beyond any doubt. So when Derek announced he was going to Phoenix again, this time for a 4-day conference, I made my own plans. I told Grace I needed her to watch the kids, making up an excuse about a family emergency. Then I woke up early on the morning of Derek's supposed departure and followed his car from a distance. He did not go to the airport.
Instead, he drove to a high-rise apartment building in downtown Denver. A luxury building with a doorman and a fountain in the lobby. I parked across the street and waited, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. 30 minutes later, a familiar car pulled into the parking garage. A silver sedan that I knew as well as my own. Caroline's car. I watched my sister walk into the building, saw her greet the doorman like she had been there many times before. And through the glass walls of the lobby, I saw Derek emerge from the elevator to meet her. They embraced right there in the lobby, in full view of anyone who cared to look. And then he kissed her. Not a quick peck on the cheek, but a real kiss. Deep and passionate. The kind of kiss I had not received from my husband in years. I sat in my car and watched my world collapse. I do not know how long I sat there. Minutes? Hours? Time lost all meaning. Eventually, I lifted my phone and began to document everything. I took pictures through the lobby windows. I noted the time and date. I photographed Caroline's car in the parking garage. And then I drove away, tears streaming down my face, my hand shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. I did not go home. I could not. Instead, I drove to Grace's office and walked through the door without an appointment. Her secretary took one look at my face and led me straight to Grace's private office. Grace closed the door behind us, sat me down on her leather couch, and held me while I sobbed. She did not ask questions. She did not say, "I told you so." She just let me cry until there were no tears left. When I finally caught my breath, she handed me a glass of water and looked me straight in the eyes. "Now," she said quietly, "we plan. We do this smart, not emotional. Are you with me?" I took a deep breath and nodded. I was done being a victim. It was time to take control. I spent 2 weeks preparing for the confrontation. Grace guided me through every step, helping me understand my legal options and protect my interests. We met after the kids were in bed, going over documents and strategies late into the night. First, I copied every financial document I could find: bank statements, investment accounts, mortgage papers, tax returns. I discovered that the luxury apartment where I had seen Derek and Caroline was purchased 2 years ago, paid for with money from an account I never knew existed. An account funded by bonuses Derek had hidden from me. I opened my own bank account at a different institution and began quietly transferring money from our joint savings. Not much, just enough to ensure I would have resources when the time came. Grace connected me with her colleague, a shark of a divorce attorney named Patricia, who had a reputation for protecting women in exactly my situation. We met in secret, and Patricia assured me that Derek's financial deception would work in my favor. I also reached out to my cousin Tom, an accountant with a meticulous eye for detail. I asked him to look at Derek's finances, and what he found was damning. Derek had been funneling money to Caroline for years. He had purchased the apartment in her name, bought her a car, paid off her student loans, all with money that should have belonged to our family. Through it all, I maintained a calm facade at home. I cooked dinner, helped with homework, smiled at Derek when he came home from wherever he had actually been. I let him believe that I was still the naive, trusting wife I had always been. But inside, I was a storm waiting to break. Finally, I was ready. I chose a Friday evening, a night when the kids would be sleeping at my parents' house. They always spent one weekend a month with Grandma and Grandpa, and this particular weekend, the timing was perfect. I prepared Derek's favorite meal: filet mignon with roasted vegetables and a good bottle of red wine. I set the table with our wedding china, lit candles, put on a nice dress. When Derek came home and saw the scene, his face registered surprise, then pleasure. "What is the occasion?" he asked, loosening his tie. "No occasion," I said with a smile. "I just thought we could use a nice evening together. Just the two of us." We ate in near silence, the tension between us thick enough to cut with a knife. Derek seemed nervous, though he tried to hide it. He kept checking his phone, kept glancing toward the door, as if he expected someone to walk through it. After dinner, I poured us each another glass of wine and set my phone on the table between us. My hand was steady as I opened the photo album I had compiled. "Derek," I said quietly, "I need to show you something." He looked at the phone. He saw the pictures, the apartment lobby, the kiss, the bank statements, the evidence of his betrayal, laid out in undeniable detail. His face went white. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The candles flickered. The clock ticked. And then Derek let out a long, shaky breath. "Jenna," he started. "Do not," I cut him off. "Do not try to explain. Do not try to make excuses. I just want the truth. All of it." He stared at the table for what felt like an eternity. And then, finally, he began to speak. "I am in love with Caroline," he said. "I have been in love with her since before our wedding. We have been together since 6 months before I proposed to you." The words hit me like physical blows. But I did not cry. I did not scream. I had already done my crying. Now I needed to hear the full extent of the betrayal. "Tell me everything," I said. And he did. He told me how it started, a spark of attraction that flared into obsession. He told me he thought marrying me would help him get over her. that he believed he could learn to love me the way he loved her. He told me how they had been meeting in secret for 13 years, how the apartment had been their sanctuary, how they had decided it was finally time to be together openly. "We want to be together," he said, publicly, honestly. "We decided it is time." I laughed then, a bitter, hollow sound that surprised us both. "Honestly, after 13 years of lies, you want to talk to me about honesty?" He had the decency to look ashamed. "I never meant to hurt you, Jenna. It just happened." "Things do not just happen," I said. "Choices are made. Every time you went to her, you were making a choice. Every time you lied to me, every time you looked me in the eye and told me you loved me while you were sleeping with my sister, you were making a choice." I leaned across the table, my voice calm and cold. "And now, I am making a choice too." He started to speak, but I held up my hand. "The kids are at my parents' house. I want you out of this house by midnight. You can take your clothes and your car and nothing else. Tomorrow morning, you will be served with divorce papers. I am done." Derek's face contorted with shock, then anger. "You cannot just throw me out. This is my house too." "Actually," I said, "according to my attorney, given your financial misconduct and infidelity, I have every right to request exclusive use of the marital home. The papers are already filed. The locks will be changed in the morning." He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "Who are you?" "I am the woman you should never have underestimated," I said. "Now get out." He left that night with nothing but a suitcase and his shattered dignity. I watched his taillights disappear down the street, and for the first time in months, I took a full breath. The storm had finally broken, and I was still standing. I did not stop with Derek's departure. I had 13 years of lies to expose, and I intended to bring every single one into the light. The following Sunday, I organized a family dinner at my parents' house. I told them it was to discuss something important about my marriage, and they agreed without question. My mother called Caroline to make sure she would be there too. I arrived early to help set the table. My hands were steady as I arranged the silverware, my mind calm and focused. I had rehearsed what I was going to say 100 times. I was ready. When everyone had arrived and we were seated around the dining table, my mother looked at me with concern. "Jenna, sweetheart, what is this about? You have been so mysterious." I stood up, my wineglass in hand as if I was about to make a toast. "I have an announcement to make," I said, "about my marriage." Derek shifted uncomfortably in his seat. We had not spoken since the night I threw him out, and he did not know what I was planning. "After 13 years, I continued, my voice clear and steady, I have learned something about my husband, something that changes everything." I looked directly at Caroline. She was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "Derek has been having an affair," I said, "for 13 years. Since 6 months before our wedding." Gasps around the table. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "And the woman he has been seeing," I continued, "is my sister, Caroline." The room erupted. My mother was crying. My father was shouting. Aunts and uncles were demanding explanations, and through it all I remained calm, presenting my evidence piece by piece. The text messages, the photos, the bank records showing the apartment, the gifts, the money Derek had funneled to Caroline. I had printed everything, and I passed the documents around the table like a court exhibit. Caroline tried to deny it at first, stumbling over her words, looking to Derek for support. But Derek was silent, his head bowed, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Finally, my father stood up. His face was red with rage, and when he spoke, his voice was barely controlled. "Get out of my house," he said to Derek. "Both of you. Now." Derek left without a word. Caroline tried to approach our mother, tried to explain, but my mother turned away from her. "You are not my daughter," my mother said through tears. "I do not know who you are, but you are not my daughter." Caroline fled, sobbing. I did not feel triumph. I did not feel vindication. I felt only a profound sadness for the family we had once been. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. My attorney, Patricia, was relentless. She presented evidence of Derek's financial misconduct to the court, demonstrating that he had used marital assets to purchase property for his mistress. The judge was not sympathetic to Derek. I was awarded the family home, primary custody of both children, and a substantial settlement. Derek was ordered to sell the apartment and surrender the proceeds as part of the divorce agreement. His reputation at work suffered too. Word spread through the industry about what he had done, and colleagues who had once respected him now avoided him. His carefully constructed image of the devoted family man crumbled to dust. Caroline did not fare much better. Her colleagues at the marketing firm heard the story, and while she was not fired, she was ostracized. Former friends refused her calls. Family members blocked her number. She found herself utterly alone. I heard through the grapevine that Derek and Caroline tried to make a life together. Without the apartment, they moved into a small rental on the outskirts of town. Without his reputation, Derek struggled to find work at his former level. The pressure began to weigh on their relationship. Within 6 months, they were fighting constantly. The fantasy they had sustained for 13 years could not survive the harsh light of reality. By the time our divorce was finalized, there were rumors that they had split up. I did not take pleasure in their misfortune, but I would be lying if I said I did not feel a sense of justice. They had made their choices. Now they were living with the consequences. And I was finally free. The first few months after the divorce were the hardest of my life. During the day, I functioned. I got the kids to school, kept the house running, smiled when I needed to smile. But at night, when Sophie and Ethan were asleep and the house was quiet, the pain would crash over me like waves. I cried more than I had ever cried in my life. I cried for the marriage I thought I had. I cried for the sister I had lost. I cried for the naive, trusting woman I had been, the woman who believed that love could protect her from betrayal. I questioned myself constantly. What did I do wrong? Why was I not enough? How did I miss the signs for so long? But slowly, with the help of a good therapist and friends who refused to let me disappear, I began to heal. I started working again, taking on small interior design projects at first, then gradually building up to larger ones. It felt good to use my skills, to create beauty, to remember that I was more than just someone's wife or someone's victim. Sophie and Ethan struggled at first with the divorce. Sophie was old enough to understand that Daddy had done something bad, though I shielded her from the details. Ethan was confused, asking when Daddy was coming home, not understanding why everything had changed. But children are resilient. With time and consistency and unconditional love, they adjusted. They visited their father according to the custody schedule, and I never spoke ill of him in front of them. Whatever Derek had done to me, he was still their father. That was between them. I joined a support group for women going through divorce. Every Thursday evening, we would gather in the community center and share our stories. I met women who had been through worse than me, women whose strength and courage inspired me to keep going. We held each other up when the world felt too heavy to bear. Slowly, the tears came less frequently. The anger faded. The wound began to close. One evening, about a year after the divorce was finalized, I was sitting on my back porch watching the sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the air smelled of autumn leaves. Sophie and Ethan were inside doing homework, and the house was filled with the sounds of their laughter and bickering. I realized, in that moment, that I was happy. Not the naive, blind happiness I had felt during my marriage. This was something different, something earned. I had walked through fire and emerged on the other side, scarred but stronger. I thought about Derek and Caroline. I did not know what had become of them, and I found that I did not care. They were no longer part of my story. The anger I had once felt toward them had faded into indifference. I did not forgive them, not exactly, but I had released them. They no longer had power over my emotions. The greatest lesson I learned through all of this is that betrayal does not define you. The actions of others, no matter how cruel, do not determine your worth. I spent 13 years building my life around a man who did not deserve me, and when he destroyed everything, I discovered that I was strong enough to build something new. I also learned that healing is not linear. Some days I felt invincible. Other days, the grief would hit me out of nowhere, triggered by a song or a smell or a random memory. But I stopped fighting those moments. I let them come, let them pass, and kept moving forward. Now, sitting in my sunlit living room, I can honestly say that I am at peace. I do not know what the future holds. Maybe I will fall in love again. Maybe I will not. But I know that I am complete on my own. I do not need anyone to make me whole. Sometimes the greatest betrayal leads to the greatest freedom. I lost a husband and a sister, but I found myself. And that, I have come to realize, is worth more than anything they could ever have taken from me. If you are watching this, and you have experienced something similar, I want you to know that you are not alone. The pain is real, but it is not permanent. You are stronger than you think, and the life waiting for you on the other side of that pain is more beautiful than you can imagine. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to move forward? Drop your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who is going through the same thing right now. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to let me know. And if you have not already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss any of our stories. These are the stories of real people, real pain, and real triumph. And sharing them helps us all feel a little less alone. Please share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. You never know whose heart you might touch. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this community. I am sending you all my love and wishing you peace, healing, and the strength to write your own happy ending. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And remember, you are worthy of love, honesty, and respect. Never settle for anything less.